Yo, sorry about starting late. Working on CPT. Let me not say that. Courage, these racist trolls biting at my ankles. Okay, I am going to also put this on the Discord. Okay, I am live. Sorry for starting late, y'all. There's no one here. I will just do my errands and you can watch this good culinary throwdown. Let me see if I can get the actual thing. Do my errand. Okay, let's go down. I am so long. Sorry, it's reading your name hard and long. Screed. Oh, yes. Chloe, check. Oh, well, once I make the channel, I will post the update in Advanced Pettiness on the Patreon channels. But do we have any voice conversations on Stack Exchange? Let's see if they cook them with. Oh, woo! Okay, so Zion's got some good questions. Let's see about that. So how does one lower their larynx and consistently sing or speak in it? Can this affect the range that a person sings in? I think larynx height tends to be conflated with range for whatever reason, and I'm trying to figure out more about why this might be. When people go lower in pitch, they tend to lower their larynx. When people go higher in pitch, they tend to raise their larynx. And both of these things make lower notes sound lower, and they make higher notes sound higher. So it's pretty interesting that these things are almost like synchronized. They don't have to be, but I think the default setting is to be synchronized. Consistently sing or speak in it. So, okay, so how does one lower their larynx in the first place? So one can lower their larynx with what I call the big dog, little dog drill. And that is when you do some silent panting. And if you raise your larynx, the dog pant will sound like a smaller dog. And if you lower it, it'll sound like a bigger dog. So it's like, so that's little dog, high larynx, and then, oh, that's big dog, low larynx. So yeah, that's how you change it. And consistently singing or speaking in it, consistently using any kind of tone mod, which is short for tone modification, any way that changes the color of your voice. If you are trying to learn it and you're not super familiar with it, I always go with overdoing it. Like, do it to 100 and then pull it back once you feel like you have mastery of it. But if you practice it at the 100% setting, that can get you acclimated to the muscle groups that make that change of color in your voice. So yeah, to consistently use it, I would do it at 100%, really push on those muscles that change the position of your larynx. And can this affect the range that you sing in? It doesn't affect the range, but it tends to move with range. So I think range has more of an effect on larynx height than larynx height has on range. But I do know some people, shout out to the student if you're saying this because you know who you are. I love you. But I do have had some people, and this student that I'm thinking of isn't alone. This is the only person I can really think of right now, that we wanted to work on not having to raise the larynx as much in order to get to a higher pitch, because we need to use the higher pitch for other drills. And when I had her do low larynx, in order to not be doing a higher larynx, so we had her sort of this by default, it became difficult to get her to take this to a higher pitch. So when I let her do baseline efforts at finding the pitch, she'd be like, ah, we can get it to like a nice high pitch. But then as soon as I put on low larynx, like she wouldn't jump as high. Just want to say, can this, yeah, affect it? So no, range affects larynx height more than vice versa, in my opinion. But it can sort of psychologically affect your perception of what range is possible. But they are completely divorceable. It's a term I use a lot. There's a lot of things that people think are related in voice that aren't necessarily related. How can one keep the softness in their singing voice while increasing the volume? I'm personally struggling to bring out my falsetto in a soft way. It depends on what you mean by softness. If you mean breathiness, there's a certain threshold. Like you can be breathy and loud, like I can be breathier and louder at the same time, and that's something you can do. But in order to get above a certain threshold, you can't be breathy in the way that people are like, the way we normally think of breathy. It sounds a little bit more like a rasp once you get to a certain level of volume. And bringing out falsetto in a soft way, I want to make sure if you're using falsetto to mean M2, which is just like includes things like falsetto, head voice, head mix, superhead. I did not like that name, I'm sorry. If you're including all these things in your definition of falsetto, which a lot of people do, then there's different ways of bringing it out in a softer way. If you're talking about literally falsetto, because falsetto in modern vocal pedagogy, modern stylings, means like, okay, so this is like a non-falsetto M2, so it sounds like kind of full, maybe a little rich and more controlled as opposed to something that's very falsetto M2, and that's like, so that thinner version of M2, let me turn off my, oh, look at people doing homework. That's amazing. Jesus. I'm turning off the, okay, good. So some people might use that definition of falsetto, and that's your definition of falsetto. It is by default what a lot of people would call soft, but it doesn't project to the same level as say like a mix M2 that sounds more like this as opposed to this. And M2 just tends to be what I would call soft in general, especially compared to the speaking voice, because there's less of like gravel and buzz and richness. And then M2, like, this is a lot of gravel and buzz and richness in my voice. My vocal cords are making a lot of contact, so I wouldn't call this a very soft voice texturally. I might call it a softer voice volume-wise, but it's not soft texturally, in my opinion. In M2, you can't really get that same kind of gravel. So I would say M2 itself tends to be pretty soft, and I would need to know more about what you mean by the word soft. If it's a volume thing, if it's a texture thing, sometimes it can even be like a phrasing thing. Because you asked this question on Stack Exchange, plug, pluggity, plug, plug, I will give it a little bit more of a thorough answer. So if you are meaning softness in terms of tone, you can get that by dropping out some of that gravel, which isn't really going to make its way into M2. If you mean it in terms of volume, obviously, like you can be quieter unless you're clamping. And sometimes people will clamp when they get past a certain block range in the voice. So this will happen for some people on like C5 or D5, and I call it the tenor block. And then it'll happen for some people around, or I guess I would say C5 through F5. Yeah, like max is where the tenor block I would consider to be in M2. Some people, when they get past that C5 to F5 range, they will God, I should have an instrument so I can give a reference point. Let me see if this won't crash my whole operation to try to pull out this keyboard. What? Add higher up is okay. So C5 to F5. So some people, when they get past like as low as C5, they'll start to clamp, or what I call clamping, and they start to use M2 in this very compressed way that sounds almost like they're trying to use it to belt with. And they'd be like, so I'm fine. Like, so I'm like, like people will start doing that naturally. That's a whole other mission to try to get that to not happen. It doesn't take too long, but I won't necessarily go into all the drills I would use for that right now because it's a little bit more work and I got to get to everybody else's questions. Thank you for people who are watching. I'll get to your questions shortly. So then some people get it past the mezzo block, which starts at G5. And they'll clamp beyond that. So I'll be like, and then I'll get a little higher. And that's like the only way they can hit it. So that's the difficulty that some people experience, and you gotta like release tension for that. And I have drills for doing so, but not right now, not for free. And last thing was softness can also mean phrasing. Some of the very aggressive phrasing that I cannot be loud, but that can still sound not as soft. So like, and I am telling you, go win. Like that's like a whole lot of extra stuff, even though it's not that loud. So if I have a very subtle, subdued phrasing, but I'm just as loud, if not louder, that could be still seen as soft. So like, and I am telling you, I'm not going. So that second one is probably louder at certain junctures, but it still has a sense of like legato, a term that's used in music, or like a slur, where everything is more continuous and less like punchy and aggressive than the first one I did. Okay, that is it for the Stack Exchange questions. Let me stop. Oh, no. Oh, God, I thought I stopped living. Yes, please post this up on SU if you'd like. Thanks, Dakota. Hello, Avadno. Hello, Snoop Dogg. Oh, my God, I'm famous. Snoop Dogg on my video, y'all. Oh. So Snoop Dogg asked, I've actually been in the future under my yelling is good for you 2.0. It's like a side episode of Yelling is Good for You. It's like Yelling is Good for You, the spin-off series. Yelling above E5 plus is possible. Inspired by true events. Chloe asks, I'm struggling to keep a high enough CQ when belting around E4 to G4. Could that be symptomatic of damage or just a lack of control? High enough. No, I think a lot of people pussyfoot belting. They kind of were like, well, I'm not really gonna commit to belting. I'm going to like do this light, soft, pretty thing because singing should always be light and soft and pretty. Oh my God, not angle tetanus. It's belting should always be light and soft and pretty, just like me. So you have to get it in your mindset. Some people naturally just have super light belts, but a lot of people just try to duck doing really hard belts, not just hard difficulty, but belting hard in the paint, because they feel like it's wrong to do so. But what that actually does is it makes it harder to stabilize your belt. It makes it harder to sorry about that. So it makes it harder to even hold on. Makes it harder to hold on to like your vocal fold configuration of even being a belt. Kenny Vong asks, how do you work on your mixed voice? First, it helps to understand mixed voice. What a lot of people call mixed voice is an amalgamation of several different mechanisms. The mechanisms are can correspond with registers. So the really quick breakdown is there's mix 1, which is where you lighten what a lot of people call chest voice. And it can sound like this instead of sounding kind of heavy like it does at default. So yeah, at default, it can be a little bit heavier and buzzier than what I was doing when I was doing the open quotient step. Or lightening my M1. And then you can thicken your M2, like we talked about the difference between falsetto and what I would call like mix 2. And then there is what I call mix 3, which is M1 again. It's you still using what a lot of people might call chest voice. And it's when you take it above a certain note threshold. If you want more on mix 3, I'm about to have an argument about it with Tristan. Fight. Someone let me know if I missed their question. So Procrastinalissa says, IDK, if someone's asked this before, but when I sing, I feel like I tend to sound slightly flat. I feel like I'm supporting well enough, so what could I do to stay the correct pitch? So pitch isn't always about, am I hitting the note correctly or whatever, because you can hit a perfectly healthy, well-supported wrong pitch. Like there's nothing about diaphragm that will make you hit the right note. You don't hit notes with your diaphragm. You hit them with your vocal folds. So if your vocal folds aren't hitting the right note, that might be because you need to learn the coordination a little bit better to hit the right note. I mean, sometimes it can happen because you're out of breath, but more often than not, it happens because your sense of pitch is skewed. Unless you're talking about like only in the high note on this song do I feel some kind of way. And I'm going to freeze these, I think. Yeah, let me freeze these. What am I doing? Be right back. I am trying to do way too much with food, and it's a problem. I keep picking up this like discount meat that like they charge a little bit less for the very last day. This one's only got like a couple good days left, so I'm giving them all this meat. Oh, I shouldn't show this. There's probably some vegans that follow me, but yeah, I'm trying to thaw those out in the sink. And I was like, oh well, I should set aside some meat for me because we're doing cookouts. So I should set aside something for me to eat for the next few days. It's like, no, it ain't gotta be like that. Okay. So, any questions I missed? Okay, let me check the Discord, see if there are questions in the Discord. No questions on Discord. Are there any more questions on YouTube? Oh my God. I know. No, it's like the meat isn't actually expired. It's just like it's going to expire soon. It was frozen before this. The meat is fine. Okay, so mix 3. So mix 3 is not necessarily related to mechanism 3. So M3. Well, not necessarily. It's not at all related to mechanism 3. So mix 1 and mix 2 I like as a shorthand because they're cute. But the only thing that makes it misleading is that one second. Lordy. I was actually about to get sick, and then I took a bunch of zinc. Now I'm not sick. Y'all, take zinc. I swear to God. I swear to God. Nobody ever listens to me, but it's a miracle drug, I swear. So, yeah. So mix 1 and mix 2 correspond to M1 and M2, but there's more kinds of mix. Mix 1 and mix 2 are not at all like mix 3. Yeah, not at all. So I need a new mix. I guess we call it belting mix. I always called it like mix 1, mix 2, mix 3, not because they correspond to M1 and 2 and 3, but that's sort of the approximate range order and where you tend to use most of them. So like mix 1, you tend to use lower as M1 starts to bridge up into M2. So as your chest starts to bridge into your head voice. So like as I get ready to start singing like the high note, that's M2. I want to be able to sing like softer in M1 because that'll set up the sound to be more continuous. M1 and M2 will sound more like each other, and it's harder to tell when I'm switching. So I switched a bunch of times in that phrase, but it shouldn't be as obvious as if I do like a heavier regular M1, like, it's harder to tell when I'm switching, not really anymore. So that is a more stark contrast. And then, so you want to use mix 1 as you head up from M1 into M2. And then as you get cross the threshold into M2, you want to make the M2 sound more M1-like. And then mix 3 is just its own thing completely, what I call like belts above E5, like E5 and above. That's how I characterize them. Oh my God. Sad. There's no reason to live this life. You could have zinc, but make sure to take zinc on a full stomach. And I keep like taking one or two every few hours. I'm a big boy. And also because I ain't trying to lose my chick over no rhinovirus. So mix 3 is a form of, a lot of people talk about like even true belting being mixed, like belt that experiences a passaggio with M2. So a belt where I can go like, so that was M1, and then I switched into M2, and that's what that popping sound was. So even when I got all that, I can't remember what I was saying. Mix 1. So when you take that up higher to E5 plus, you can still get that pop, but it starts to sound a little bit more like M2. And a lot of people even want to call just any belt above A4 a mix because they mad. How you gonna hate from outside A4? So they're not able to get past this A4 in full M1 or regular like canonical M1 that experiences an actual passaggio. They're not able to do that. So they just assume that because M2 is the only thing I can do up there, everybody must be using it. They just put different colors on it. And believe it or not, I actually used to think this myself. I'm so sorry. So I used to believe that, and I tried all the tonal modifications and vowel mods, enough of that. I'm lucky. I discovered phonetics and phonology very early on. So unless you want vowels to be changed for stylistic purpose, there is almost nothing where you need to use a certain vowel. There's no normal vocal techniques where you can only do them on the correct vowel. The only time I really change vowels with any kind of purpose outside of what I would normally pronounce things as is style. So if I want to do a more like punk style, I think I'll favor these really exaggerated open vowels like I kissed a girl and I liked it. So I kissed a girl and I liked it. So the vowel transformations that I did the first time blend into that sort of post-punk aesthetic that Katy Perry draws off of. There's a specific name I feel like for it because it's very common in like hippie white Christians do that all the time. Okay, what other factors are involved with a dopey voice besides just the high larynx? Oh, You probably mean low larynx. This dopey voice, I think of as this. So I might make like a bigger space in the back of my mouth, along with lowering the larynx. Like so if I don't make quite as big of a space in the back of my mouth, it doesn't sound quite as dopey as if I do this. So I still have a low larynx, but if I don't make that space in the back of my mouth super big, it sounds weird and yawny, but it doesn't sound like duh. And there actually is some interesting discourse about whether or not that if you're familiar with mind dementia, whether or not that voice is, I almost said transphobic, whether or not that voice is ableist and makes fun of people with Down syndrome. I haven't really studied enough of Down syndrome voices to tell what makes them sound that way. Because honestly, I think the cues I use right now to think, oh, maybe they have Down syndrome is the pacing of their speech, not as much the quality of their voice, like the cadences and intonations I use to maybe say, oh, maybe they have some type of like disability. But the one thing I would say is potentially involved in the dopey voice as well is conodal, which sounds like this. Like that's the other thing that might be involved in that. And I think conodal might be more likely the thing to be derived from a caricature of people with Down syndrome, because I can't remember if this is definitely true, but I feel like I read somewhere, I feel like I have a memory and I'm trying to recall it, Dakota, that I feel like I heard somewhere that the back of like the tonsils and everything can sometimes become large and I'll get to your questions in a second, becomes a larger chance of you having baseline conodal, because the tonsils where the back of your tongue curls towards to make conodal gets really enlarged. So I think it sets an attractor state potentially for more conodal. Attractor state is like, well, if your vocal tract is like this, if you're doing these things with your voice, you're also likely to do these things. Oh, yay. Synergy asks questions. I appreciate that. I'm glad. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff. That's a whole nother discourse in terms of like voice and disability. I ain't got time for that right now. Unless people specifically want to hear about all of that. Like I have time to think about these issues. It's just like if no one's asking. Okay, so keeping larynx lower while belting is just a matter of strength or some mental training. Both. So it takes some muscular effort to lower your larynx, but you do it like every time you yawn. So it's not that doing it is so impossible. It's like doing it for extended periods of time can take some effort, and remembering to do it while you're doing something as demanding as belting can be difficult, because there's these different levels of precision and intensity. It's really hard to lift a 50-pound dumbbell and do brain surgery with the other hand, because you need precision and fine tuning with one hand, and then with the other hand you're doing something very like muscular and brute forcey. So altering the tone of your voice can take a little bit more nuance, but belting is just like slap you upside the face, so it can be hard to keep all those things straight. Yeah. Wait, what sounds amazing, Chloe? The sound of my wondrous voice massaging you to sleep. Is there anything that can help the effects of anxiety on the voice? Why is it like the XI and the PS like that? The effects of anxiety on the voice. In particular, how can one remove excessive, well, that's so weird. Oh, no, never mind. Excessive habitual laryngeal tension, save for addressing the psychological component of said anxiety. That is actually a very good question. But like random letters are bolded, so it's throwing me a little bit. I don't know if like, I was trying to see if there's any meaning to the bolding, but I don't think there is. So basically, if you have anxiety, what other ways then, in addition to addressing the underlying anxiety, can you reduce the effect of anxiety on your voice? I had one. I definitely have another one. I'm trying to remember because I thought I had one that was really cute. Now I can't remember it. Oh, I'm so annoyed. I'm so annoyed. Mm. Well, you can work on. Oh, that was the first one. So the first one is intentionally fatiguing your voice by doing things that are tiring with your voice, like constructive belting, and other things like holding out longer tones that might be a little bit more challenging for your voice. Doing enough of those can fatigue your voice, so it doesn't have to be like your voice is too tired to be anxious and jittery. And the other thing that is more the mainline level of way I would approach it is holding steady pitches around your talking range, like practice holding them steadily in a nice, calm, comfortable environment. I like to use the like sound of the universe sound. It's just like calming to have that all that vibration reflected back into you because it's not leaving your mouth. So it can be almost like a massage, and it also helps you feel the fluctuations of your larynx a little bit more. Like if my pitch is wobbling, I can feel it in a different way that I don't feel it quite the same way if I'm just holding the note regular. So I'm like if I have a very unsteady note that I can kind of feel it, but I'm like like I can feel the pitch fluctuations in my mouth more. So it gives you this feedback. And then last thing for extra credits, I appreciate you asking a question. The last thing would be as soon as I get an idea, it's gone. The last thing I would address would be what's that behavior called? It's like exposure therapy. Desensitization, I think it's called. You can do desensitization with talking a whole bunch, holding long notes. So with someone you trust, do a lot of the vocal tasks that you feel like your voice is too anxious to do normally, and do them with some type of like sustain, like hold out notes a little bit longer while you're talking, or talk very slowly so you can really hear the jitteriness and your voice jitters when you get that pitch fluctuation. I should probably like look at the camera when I talk, and maybe I can be one of these popular YouTube teachers instead of me. How would you fix your larynx for tensing up when registering head voice? I would need to understand a little bit more what you mean by that question. And I don't do this to be a jerk, but there's just so many different ways of talking about voice that one word might mean one thing to one person, and another word might mean, the same word might mean another thing to a different person. It's too much. It's too much. I relinquish it to the world. But you might want to scroll back in this video, Xander, and I talk about how people might tense up as they pass certain range blocks in M2, and see if that's the kind of tensing up that you're talking about. There's some tricks for that. Let's see if there's anything on Discord. Is there any? Oh! I'm sorry. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Where am I still in voice chat? Why am I not? Oh God! Did it kick? No, didn't kick. Okay, good. Didn't kick me out. Okay. Yes, Jane, no problem. Thank you for your question. I'm sorry, I'll check. Okay, Satan, they will be archived. There will be receipts. There will be dinner. Let me click back in. Let's see more. Oh yeah, I try to keep going lower, and my head voice won't let me. I can just lower layer. Oh yeah, I keep trying to go lower in my head voice and just won't let me. It keeps going higher. So you try to lower your larynx and head voice and it keeps going higher. Well, I don't even know what I'm eating. I guess I don't even really mean dinner. I mean, I'm gonna do a bunch of cooking. I have to make these marinades for the meat that I'm gonna have for the cookout. Oh, Shamara, you gonna be able to stop by the cookout? Yes. We might move it because of the rain. So let me know what days. Some exercises. Death. Yes, I always be serving death. What are Oh, I see why you say that, Alvin. I hate you. What are some exercises I can work on to help stabilize, slow down my vibrato because it's fast and then sonic when I'm nervous? Yes, sonic. Collect those vibrato rings. What can you do to slow it down? Vibrato is this weird all or nothing thing because it's a reflex almost. It's like a reflex arc that you don't consciously control while it's happening. So I think you kind of have to, there's not many ways when someone going like from vibrato to trill and someone that's already very good at vibrato. So vibrato's like, ah, and trill is like, ah. So unless I'm making something like that where someone can already do the first one and I'm taking them to the second one, and depending on what their mindset is like and how they learn, I might do it from scratch because I'm trying to think if there's any other options. But if you try to build the existing vibrato, it's so hard because it's a reflex. You don't control how your vibrato is consciously. It just happens. At least that's how it's supposed to. So yeah, I would say you have to kind of learn vibrato from scratch. Unfortunately, if you want it to be stylistic. However, like stylistically changed to a certain rate that isn't your baseline rate. But if you're talking about anxiety or and your rate of vibrato, listen to the stuff I just talked about with anxiety and voice answering Jane's question. What is that, Jane? I don't even know. So how can you tell if you're M1 or M2? Pay me. Are you on my Discord server? If you are not on my Discord server, join my Discord server. It's in the doobly-doo for this video. And wait, or is it? I'm upset. Did I not point? It's on my YouTube channel. It's linked on my YouTube channel. So sign up to be it's free. Sign up to be in the channel with all the like modules and stuff. And there's a previous module I did on figuring out what mechanism you're in. The main instrument I use for that is what I call the Passaggio Test or Pop Test or Yodel Pop Passaggio, Passaggio Pop, whatever, some permutation of those words. Test where you try to break your voice. If it breaks, it'll normally have been in M1. If it doesn't break, it's usually going to have been in M2. So, oh, it broke. I was in M1 when I started. Doesn't break. I guess I was in M2. So you should check that out, and that should hopefully be helpful. Office hours. How can we tell the difference between vocal fatigue or something else when trying to build up strength, belting strength, or instructing someone else too? You shouldn't have a sudden desire to cough if you are just experiencing fatigue. So there's a lot of signs that are just more immediately painful fatigue is a slow build, but ultimately, especially when you're teaching, the the best way to tell which one you're experiencing is to give yourself space to figure out what you're actually feeling, and your student the same way, to give them space for what they're actually feeling. Don't sort of lead them on by being like, do you feel this thing? Do you feel this like scratching pain? Do I feel this pain? Do I feel this scratching pain? Just try to allow yourself to feel yourself. I can't believe I'm giving that advice to a minor, but allow yourself to feel yourself. And please, FBI, don't shut down my YouTube. So if you shut down YouTube, if you let yourself feel what you're feeling, you can piece together what you're experiencing 9 times out of 10. So it's good to learn what different things feel like and to learn to trust yourself on that, and also to have your students learn to do that work for themselves. Because there's no such thing as like a damaging sound or inherently damaging technique. It's only like misapplied versions of certain vocal features that will make like I can do conodal and not have it hurt at all. But if I do conodal frugally without paying attention, I can like bump my vocal cords a little bit, and that can be uncomfortable. Oh my God. The treason in my very YouTube comments. Well, y'all, if y'all have questions, I'm checking Discord for questions as well. Okay, we running down the home stretch. If a bunch of y'all come with some questions like now, I will stay to make up for lost time. But if none of y'all have no questions, I'm gonna leave at like 8:30. Wait, all those times I coughed suddenly during my vocals, it wasn't just my chords getting used to singing properly. Huh? Okay, so oftentimes no. So that's the other thing. It's like there's no rule that's hard and fast. Yes, coughing can be a sign of something that's vocally damaging, but one, vocal damage is not instantaneous. Like permanent vocal damage is almost never instantaneous unless you're Jamie. It starts with a V. This is a vocal coach, and he would explode glass, and he accidentally inhaled a piece of glass. But sort of something like that happening to you, you don't need to worry about damage that much. It's not the boogeyman. It's not going to creep up on you at night. It's not going to make you hold your purse in an elevator. So don't be so spooked for it all the time. But other things that can make your have the nerves to cough. So breathy things can dry out your vocal folds, which can make them susceptible to damage, but that in itself isn't vocal damage. And also using the false folds, and just using either like extreme breathiness or extreme extra vocal fold track features can be weird and disorienting for your voice. So you have this almost reflexive urge to stop. I actually felt a tickle, so I had to cough. How do I help myself? How do I help myself to stop being so breathy? Do you really want to not be breathy, or do you feel like you're supposed to not be breathy? If you really want to not be breathy, you can do glottal strikes to get rid of that, and I'll be like, it's all down, do these like really hard smacking, or type of hard glottal strikes at the beginning, and that'll start you on a good slate with your vocal folds closer together, and hopefully they won't leak as much air because that's what causes breathiness. So you can start with that. Anything else? Yeah, no, and I thought I would give out on something like this, not just because I need money, but because I just would not feel comfortable giving out certain drills without really priming people on how to do them correctly, because you're either going to waste your time or make things worse. So I actually just answered a question about vibrato, snazzy name here. Scroll back a little bit in the video. I'll give a quick summary at the end of answering this next question. How do you tell if you are not singing correctly? how it feels. There's no, and correct is not a term I like to use for voice. I like to use safe. I like to use like accurate. Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine, Snazzy. If you use a certain sound, that same sound can sound almost identical, and one time you're doing it in a way that is a little bit more damaging, and the other time you do it in a way that's completely safe. So it's really up to you to feel that out in terms of safety. In terms of correct, you need to figure out what your goals are and how you want to sound. If you sound like that and it is safe, you're singing correctly. Dang, y'all coming in with these questions. I will fight you all. Who am I even talking to? Anything else going on? Why had to come up with that question just as I was about to leave? How do you strengthen your diaphragm? Continue living. Like every day you're using your diaphragm all the time, in the street, in the sleet, in the hail, in the veil. Like you are using your vibrato. You're using your diaphragm all the time. No, you're fine. Yeah, you're fine. I'm almost done. So you don't have to strengthen it unless you were on an iron lung for like a good couple months. Actually, if you're on iron lung, you probably never will come off the iron lung. But strengthening your diaphragm is not something you need for more breath control. If that's why you're asking. If you want something for more breath control, look at controlling your diaphragm, not strengthening it. It doesn't take much more work to do better breathing as a singer. It just takes a little bit of mindfulness. Unless you're singing some like Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston duet, vocally directed by Tyler Perry and Celine Dion, like you don't probably have a whole lot that is going to really wind you like that. If you can talk just fine, you probably have enough diaphragm mechanics for most pop songs. And even like the most bad of the vocal athlete songs that require you to have the diaphragm mechanics, it's like it's almost never unhuman. It's almost never like, wow, if I just like try a little harder, I could do that too. It might not sound as good, but I can hold that note for as long if I just like did a little bit more work. So yeah. Oh my God, Hard and Long. I just understood your name now. I am troubled. Okay. Let's translate microphone. Again, I need to hear what you're talking about. So, how do I feel about the indigo voice? I think it has its merits. Like, there's times when I like to use it. It's very sparing. There is some cute texture to it, if that's a particular indie girl voice you're talking about. I'm sorry. So I was actually just thinking about this. There's a cover I want to do from my From the Vault series covers where I dig up arrangements of songs that I made during my childhood. Well, not my childhood, but like my later childhood, or songs I liked in my childhood that I eventually learned how to play. And one of those songs is called 17 or At 17, I think, by Janice Ian. And that one I hear is done with this rhotic texture, even though the original singer isn't necessarily rhotic, because I think the image that an indie girl voice has been associated with tends to be like a little bit moody, but not emo, and very like muted. And the lyrics to that song resonate well with the properties of resonate well with the properties of an indie voice. So I was like, I learned the truth at 17, that love was meant for beauty queens and high school girls with clear skin smiles who married young and then retired. So if I sang that normal without indie stuff, so I learned the truth at 17. That love is meant for beauty queens. So it's like you hear it without the rhotic, and then that love's meant for beauty queens. So does Billie Eilish have that indie girl voice? She fits in with the indie girl voice. And what is the indie girl voice changes over time. Like it had a phase where it was very rhotic, but I think that was for a while, for like the 2000s, I think were rhotic indie girls. And now, where are they going? They definitely do. I haven't studied them enough now, and I honestly need to be better about that. There's this pronunciation bend that some of them are doing that changes the vowels. I won't get too deep into it, but like, I think Selena Gomez like, I just want to be good to you. So like that, or think SZA's pronunciation of stuff. So that plus some other like rhotic sensibilities, like not being too R&B with how you do something or too pop, gives you the indie girl voice now. And you don't necessarily have to do rhotic to do those, but I'm trying to figure out what unites these voices besides that pronunciation angle, if there's any textures that really unite them anymore. I'm sure there are, but I need to think about that again. I got the nine inch and the avocados. Oh yeah, true. What? Okay. I hate it because indie girl voice is used as a way to make people sound good. Yeah, that's the okay. Sorry, yeah, because I completely agree with you there. That's why I don't use it that much, because I think people give. Well, no, I know I see this on like singing competitions and album reviews that people that sing like that are tend to thought it's like, you're a unique, one of a kind creature. You're an artist with so many deep thoughts. Just because you lift the dorsum of your tongue up. How do I feel about SZA using steroids to keep touring? Not my baby SZA. We were supposed to be married. Depends on what her touring is like. If it's sparing concerts, then yeah. But I think if she needs steroids to keep going on, that is like a Band-Aid. That is not a complete fix of the problem. And she should make sure she addresses the underlying issues. But if it's something that like she doesn't do very often, she doesn't tour a whole lot, in terms of having her voice needs like be in that level of disrepair, I wouldn't be too worried about it. But if she, which she probably does, has a very busy tour schedule and has just started really getting into taking her vocals to a new level, so she's working with techniques that she might not be familiar with how to do safely. I think would be best to actually target the problem itself, the behavior that led her there. So, like in Adele's case, like I wouldn't want her to be on vocal steroids. Maybe just to survive for a little bit longer. But if you do that and you're on steroids and you know you're not doing any changes to how you sing, that's how you get more permanent damage. Like you enable yourself to keep using your voice in these ways that give you phonotrauma. And you don't get like damage in the way that most singers think of it, like, oh, my voice is gone forever, or I have to like have a several month, year-long recovery period. You don't get that without, at least in my opinion, you do not get that without making a real big mistake, or which people usually know. I was like too drunk. I was too loud. I went too long. They just did something. Like they did something that is not ordinary for them. But besides that, you don't really have any instances of That's what I'm looking for. You don't really have instances of people just, oh no, suddenly it's nodules. Yeah, so I think SZA can short-term use the inhaler, but she needs to keep an eye on that dressing. I do not know, because again, you can't hear damage. I would guess the new behaviors that she started using, because SZA was doing things way before. When did I first hear about SZA? I heard about it like years before she busted out on the scene with, I think Love Galore was what busted out on the scene. But I had heard of her way before, and I think like when I was in undergrad, so that was 2012 or earlier. So it's like that's 6 years that she's been doing stuff with her voice before she ran into this. But I think with her recent release being garnering national attention, she stepped her game up, which I admire. The behaviors I think she is doing more that she wasn't doing before, that she might need to like relearn how to do or do a bit safer, is belting. I think one of them, and maybe like the length of the riffs. The riffs themselves are not a super high risk behavior, but if you're doing like a lot of riffs, you're not used to them and you're not comfortable with them, it can take your mind away from preventing damage. So she's like more focused on getting the riff right than like, are her vocal folds comfortable at that moment. Like this video to support that riff. But please do like this video if you get a chance. Spread the word about these office hours. Thank you so much for coming. I will take one last question, whoever gets it out first. Oh, let me check Discord. I'll still do one last question from YouTube. No questions on Discord. Thank that's it then. Yep, nope, got that. Bye, y'all. Oh, wait. Okay, good. You better be saying bye, not another question at the very last 29th hour.